All right, so I did a lot of typing and notes. Some stuff you guys are not going to be able to go to in Scripture because it's in the Dead Sea Scrolls. So unless you have a copy of the Dead Sea Scrolls, that would be great. If you don't, then I'm going to tell you where it is in the Dead Sea Scrolls. And if you want to buy, if you ask me what books to buy for, there's two of them, two types of book. One is the Complete Dead Sea Scrolls, and they got an updated version. And the other one is the Dead Sea Scrolls by Martinez. And both of those books actually share through. Well, the Martinez one actually goes to Hebrew on one side, and then the English on the other, and then the Complete Dead Sea Scrolls in the English is all English, obviously. Okay, so it definitely will deal with that. All right. Now, let me go ahead and read my notes really fast, and we'll go ahead and get started. I said, in this lesson, we'll be going over the background of the Essene community. Have everyone ever heard of the Essene community, or the Essenes? Has anyone ever heard of it?
I've heard of them, yes.
Okay. So the Essenes actually is where the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Essenes was a community where the Dead Sea Scrolls were located. So I'm sure everyone's heard of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Mm-hmm. All right. Next we will be going over the belief of the community. Finally, we'll be going over the relationship, their walk with, the relationship, in other words, why did they go to Damascus? What was so important that they wanted to go to Damascus? And we're going to go over, not this week, but next week, some parallels of, for example, Yahuchanan or John the Immerser, commonly called John the Baptist. You know, where did he get this eating locusts from, which we'll read that in the Dead Sea Scrolls? Where did he get this immersion, commonly called baptism? Where did that come from? We'll get all the history behind that. All right, so that will be next week. And then we're going to go into, I'm going to go over just a little bit about Shaul today, but we're going to go into it next week to figure out where did Shaul Paul get this information from. You know, we do not do works of the law and all this stuff that seems like it's causing people to stumble. We're going to see that coming out of the Dead Sea Scrolls as well, their community. So we're going to see that, and then some of the quotes that the Mashiach agrees with, and some of the things that he did not agree with. Like, for example, where it says, you have heard that it was said to hate your enemy. Remember, he didn't say it was some scripture. He just told you, you heard that it was said. Okay. Well, in the Dead Sea Scrolls, it literally says hate your enemy. That's where that comes from. So we're going to go over a lot of this information next week as well. Okay. We will be dealing with the immersion next week. Where did it come from? Terms used in the scriptures, like the book of Acts. Like, for example, have everyone heard of the way? They're in the way, or the sect, or the Nazarenes. Okay. All right. So the way, Derek, the way, Derek, but the way is what they went under. Then all of a sudden you see the way in the Tanakh. I mean, in the Messianic writings. The sect. Remember the heresy of that sect. That's also, they were also called that sect, and we'll see that next week. And obviously the Nazarenes. What did that mean? Okay. But again, all these things stem back from who these people are in the Qumran community. Just so happens, Yahuchanan or John the Immerser or John the Baptist, remember it says he was raised in the wilderness. Mm-hmm. Well, where at in the wilderness? It happens to be, he's 5 miles from the Qumran community. Okay, some would say it's 8 miles, but 5 miles where they found all the jars and all this other stuff from where he was and how he grew up. So we're gonna go over all that stuff next week. Okay. Okay, so we should understand in the end that our belief is not connected to Christianity. This is my whole point of going over this, to say people think that when you believe in the Messiah, you guys got that stuff from the Christendom, or you got it from Catholicism, or something to that effect. You guys are just Christians, Hebrew Christians, or something crazy like that, right? So we're going to go over, actually, it has nothing to do with Catholicism. They have a whole different spin on things. Their understanding is there is no law and commandments, and that there's like a whole nother belief started somewhere. Okay, that's not what we are. We actually are going to bridge the gap between what happened years ago, because the only thing you hear is from Babylon, after they came out of Babylon. If you believe in the Maccabees, which is an excellent story, that took place, a historical point. But my point is, after that, then all of a sudden things go blank, and then all of a sudden we pop up with a scripture called the New Testament. So they're like, well, what happened in that gap? What happened in between the time of them coming out of Babylon? What happened to coming out of the Maccabean dynasty? What happened between after that to the time the term Pharisees, Sadducees, Essenes, Zealots, really, but all of those, where they come from? That's the part that we're going to talk about today. And then we're going to say, so we're going to say a continuation from when they got out to what's going on when the Sanhedrin came on the scene. Okay. Let me see here. The purpose of this is to help those that are in the fence, or really straddling the fence, and believing in the Mashiach. That's one. The other one is to share with you that obviously this has nothing to do with some Catholicism. And finally, for those that just want to strengthen their belief and share with others. That's basically what we're doing. And we're trying to bridge that link between there and the Brit Kadashah, commonly called the New Testament, or the Messianic writings. We're just bridging that gap there. All right. Let me give you a quick example of how we bridge these together. Okay, so let's look at really quick. You guys can go to Isaiah, or Yeshayahu, chapter 42, verse 16. 42, 16. We're going to read 16 through 18. Now, there's going to be more to it once we start getting over a whole bunch of quotes, but I just want to give you one quote, and so you can see what I'm talking about. All right, so this is in Yeshayahu, Isaiah chapter 42, verse 16 through 18. He says, "And I will bring the blind by way that they know not. I will lead them in a path that they have not known. I will make darkness light before them, and crooked things straight. These things will I do unto them and not forsake them. They shall be turned back, they shall be greatly ashamed, that trust in graven images that say to the molten image, you are our mighty ones. Hear, you deaf, and look, you blind, that you may see." Okay, so here there's a prophecy about there's going to be a time when the deaf is going to see, the blind is going to hear, see, the deaf is going to hear, X, Y, and Z, right? Now, in the Dead Sea Scrolls, I'm going to give you the Qumran number, so if you guys want to go look it up, it will be Qumran number 4Q521. 4 meaning the K4, okay? Qumran 521.
How are we spelling Qumran?
Qumran will be more or less like this. Oops. Qumran, okay? And it'll be Q, 4Q, 5, 2, 1. Okay? All right, Qumran. All right, so let's listen to what the Dead Sea Scrolls have. And keep in mind, this is talking about, they're paralleling this in the commentary in Yeshayahu in the Dead Sea Scrolls. They have a commentary to every scripture. Okay, that's basically what's happening. So their commentary to Isaiah 42, verse 16 is this. "The heavens and the earth will listen to his Mashiach, and none therein will stay from the commandments of their set-apart ones. Seekers of Yahuwah, strengthen yourselves in his service, all you hopeful in your heart. Will you not find Yahuwah in this? For Yahuwah will consider the pious, of the Chasdim, we'll talk about them in a minute, and call the righteous by name. Over the poor, his spirit will hover and will renew the faithful with his power. And he will esteem the pious on the throne of the eternal kingdom. He who liberates the captives, restores sight to the blind, straighten the bent, and forever I will cleave to the hopeful and to his mercy. And his fruit will not be delayed for everyone. And Yahuwah will accomplish esteemed things which have never been, as he," then it has it's broken there. It says, "For he will heal the wounded and revive the dead and bring up news to the poor. He will lead the uprooted in the knowledge and smoke." Okay, and then it breaks off again on the Dead Sea Scrolls there. All right, so there's a parallel between that, and we're going to see more parallels with Isaiah 42, 61. There's going to be some other ones that they're looking at this particular being the Messiah or the Mashiach. Okay, Matthews 11, 4, and 5. Matthews 11, 4, and 5. Matthews 11, 4, and 5 says this. "Yahushua answered and said unto them, Go and show Yehukanan," or John, "again those things which you do hear and see. The blind receives their sight, and the lame walks. The lepers are cleansed, and the deaf hear. The dead are raised up, and the poor have the good news preached to them. Okay? So you see there's a saying in the Tanakh. Then there's the commentary of the Qumran scrolls, and then there's the Mashiach quoting this to tell Yehukanan or John what's going on. So we're saying we're bridging that gap that way. Can everyone understand that? It has nothing to do with some Catholicism making up a story about a man, and then he did all these things, and he's plagiarizing, so to speak, from the Tanakh. Okay, this is an ongoing thing. We're going to see that in a minute. But before we get into all that, I need to establish some history. We got to establish a background from one point all the way up to the time of the Sanhedrin.
So what you're saying is that it was necessary for him to tell Yehukanan that because Yehukanan grew up studying these things.
Right, he already knew.
Okay. So
right. Right. Yehukanan already knew. The Pharisees already. All of them knew. All of them was really waiting for a Mashiach.
Right.
You know, and the difference was, you know, all of them knew that. We'll talk about it next week. But think about it this way. Remember when they asked about what authority did the Mashiach do this, and then when he talked about what authority did Yehukanan have, then you notice they got quiet. Well, the question is, well, why would they get quiet? What authority did Yehukanan have that no one else would have said, well, you know, he has no authority. So obviously whoever was behind Yehukanan's authority actually really had authority. And we're going to see that next week. Okay? All right. But let's start from the captivity portion of it. In Ezra chapter 7, verse 25. I'm just going to read verse 25, and then we'll go down to chapter 10, verse 7 and verse 8. All right? So this is dealing with the Babylonian captivity first. All right, so what we're going to learn here is that Ezra, he actually restores the actual council. And this is going to be the council of elders. That's what he's going to be restoring. Okay? All right, Ezra 7:25 says this, "And you, Ezra, after the wisdom of your Elohim that is in your hand, set magistrates and judges, which may judge all the people that are beyond the river, all such as know the laws of your Elohim, and teach you them that know them." Know them not. Then jump down to chapter 10, verse 7 and verse 8. It says, "And they made proclamation throughout Yehuda and Jerusalem unto all the children of the captivity, that they should gather themselves together unto Jerusalem, and that whosoever would not come within 3 days, according to the counsel of the princes and the elders," this is the council that's being set up, "all his substance should be forfeited, and himself separated from the congregation of those that had been carried away." All right? So remember, they've been restored. They're ending the captivity. They're going back to Jerusalem. They're going to start building Jerusalem. Everyone's familiar with this story. All right. So I got about this time, Antiochus Epiphanes rose to power over Israel. The high priest passed from Oniah the third to his brother Yasun, or commonly called Jason, by way of corruption. So I said, how do you know it was corrupt? All right. So we're going to read that in 2 Maccabees, chapter 4, verse 7 through 8, and then I'm going to jump to 10 and 11, and then we're going to go to Maccabees 4:13. All right, so you're going to see both of them. All right, so I know most of y'all don't have Maccabees, so I'll just go ahead and read it. "Yasun of Jason, the brother of Oniah, obtained the high priesthood by corruption, promising the kings at an interview 360 talents of silver, and from another source of revenue 80 talents. He at once shifted his countrymen over to the Greek way of life and introduced new customs contrary to the Torah." Okay, that's 2 Maccabees chapter 4, 7, 8, 10, and 11. Now, we're going to go to Maccabees 4:13. It says, "So Yasun Jason's high priesthood was considered not valid, because how wicked he was. Jason was wicked and not a high priest. So because of how wicked he was, they didn't even consider him a high priest." Okay, everyone's with me so far? All right, at this time, many who wanted to remain true to the Torah escaped into the wilderness. All right, they left and went into the wilderness. Now, I'm going to read First Maccabees chapter 2, verse 26. And I'm going to stop at verse 31, 26 to 31. All right, this is First Maccabees chapter 2, verse 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, and 31. All right, so it says, "Thus dealt he zealously for the law of Elohim, like Pinchas did unto Zimri." We're going to talk about Pinchas in the next week. Zimri, the son of Shalom. "And Mettiah cried throughout the city with a loud voice, saying, Whosoever is zealous for the law and maintains the covenant, let him follow me. So he and his sons fled into the mountains and left all that ever they had in the city. Then many sought after justice and judgment, went down into the wilderness to dwell there, both they and their children and their wives and their cattle, because affliction increased sore upon him. Now when it was old, the king's servants and the host that was at Jerusalem, and the city of David, and certain men who had broken the king's commandment were gone down into the secret places in the wilderness." Okay, so what wound up happening is, obviously you understand that they didn't want them to do the laws and commandments no more. Okay, so the ones that wanted to do that, they took a stance. Okay, and they all fled into the wilderness. Everyone's familiar with the Maccabean story?
Okay.
All right. So next we got the period of what they call the Zealots. But before I tell you, the Maccabees actually joined a people called the Chassidim. Have everyone heard of the Chassidim? It means pious ones. All right. So the Maccabees actually joined with them. You can find that in First Maccabees 2:44 through 48. Okay, so y'all can see that. But now I want to get to the period of the Zugat, which is 147, right now. And these are things you guys can look up history-wise. Okay. Okay, and let's see, 140 through 37 BCE. Okay. All right. During this time, the Greek ruled Israel and lasted until the end of the Maccabean dynasty. Okay. During this time, the assembly of the elders was known as the Senate. Okay. So during this time period, we're going from 140 to 37 BCE. Okay. Now, you all don't have this, so I'm going to have to read it myself. This is from Judith, the Apocrypha, Judith 11:9 through 15. Okay. Judith 11:9 through 15. All right, so it says, "Now, as concerning the matter which Achor did speak in our council, we have heard his words. For the men of Bethulah saved him and declared unto them all that he had spoken unto you. Therefore, O Adon and governor, reject not his word, but lay it up in your heart. For it is true, for our nation shall not be punished, neither can the sword prevail against them, except they sin against their Elohim. And now that my Adon be not defeated and frustrated of his purpose, even death is now fallen upon them, and their sin have overtaken them, wherewith they will provoke their Elohim to anger, whenever they shall do that which is not fit to be done. For their virtue fails them, and all their water is scant. And they have determined to lay hands upon their cattle and purpose to consume all those things that Elohim has forbidden them to eat by his law." Now they're going to be eaten unclean. Okay. "And are resolved to spend the first fruits of their corn and the tenth of wine, and only which they had purified and reserved for the priests they served in Jerusalem before the faces of our Elohim, which things it is not lawful for any of the people so much as to touch with their hands." You know, things that belong to the priests was considered set apart for them. He says, "For they have sent some to Jerusalem, because they also have dwelt there, and have done this alike, to bring them a license from the Senate. Now when they shall bring them word, they will forthwith do it, and they shall be given unto be destroyed that same day." All right, so on this time period, a lot of evil things were happening. All right, So you had some that wanted to stand up for what righteousness was. And so when they did, they started leaving all those that were wicked. From this stage, we're going to birth three major groups. There is another one called the Zealots, but three major groups. Does anyone know the three major groups? Sadducees, Pharisees. Well, scribes are going to be in it. So it'll be the Essenes. Okay, those three. Okay, Pharisees, Sadducees, Essenes. All right. Now, this is way before the quote-unquote New Testament, so we're going to see how did they come into play. All right. So first, I want to deal with the Sadducees. Does anyone know anything about them? Or they're really called Sadducees, righteous ones. But does anyone know anything about the Sadducees? What do they believe?
They didn't believe in the resurrection. They didn't believe in spirits. They didn't believe in the resurrection.
Okay.
They believe in messengers or nothing like that.
Right. Okay. Everyone agrees? And we'll read about that. It's actually in the scriptures. We'll read that. In the writing, excuse me. All right. So, Sadducees, the Sadducees, were founded by a certain Sadduc, and the name is Antigonus. All right. So, they were founded by A-N-T-I-G-T. Okay. All right, so I'm going to read a little bit about the commentary. And Josephus kind of helps out a little bit of this. But what he says is, we find that the certain Sadduc misunderstood Antiochus' teaching. Okay, he was the teacher for them. And he says, he wrongly concluded that since we should not keep Torah to gain a reward, that there must not be any reward. So Zadok concluded that there is no reward to be obtained in the afterlife, nor any punishment to be avoided. The Sadducees believed that there is no afterlife and no resurrection, as Josephus writes. But the doctrine of the Sadducees is this: the soul died with the body. Josephus' Antiquities 18:2 and 4. Okay? We know that the Sadducees believe this as well when we read it in Matthew 22, verse 23. I'll read that in Acts 23:8, where it says this: the Sadducees, which say that there is no resurrection. Now you can read that again, Matthew chapter 22, verse 23, and as well as in Acts. Okay? But Sadducees say that there is no resurrection, neither messengers, commonly called angels, nor spirits. They didn't believe in any of those things. All right? You see that in Acts chapter 23, verse 8. All right? So that's their makeup. They maintain that the only life we have is the one we have in this world. We are in now, and the only reward we'll ever have are the ones we obtain in this world. Elohim does not reward us or punish us in the afterlife. He was little concerned with what we do. Now, think about that. They believe that everything you can get is in the life that you are in right now. Once you die, it's over. You have to worry about no Gehenna. There's nothing after this. There's no meaning other than live a good life. And if you live a good life, keep the laws and commandments, that he will baruch you or bless you, as it's commonly said, and you will live a good life that way. That's the Sadducees' understanding. Okay? I got a couple more. Okay, I'll actually read one more Josephus quotes. This is in 13:16:6 in the Josephus Antiquities. The Pharisees had delivered to the people a great many observance of succession from their fathers. Who did this? Pharisees, which are not written in the law of Moses. And for that reason, it is that the Sadducees or the Sadducees reject them and say that we are to esteem those observances to be obligatory, which are in the written word, but are not to be observed, what are to be derived from the traditions of our forefathers. Josephus, Antiquities 13:10-6. Now, the Pharisees are separated from them because they believe in a afterlife, right? So now, and keep in mind, their teacher was the same teacher. So that's what I'm saying. They said some groups misunderstood that teacher and went one way, and the Pharisees broke off and went another way. All right? It says the teaching of the Sadducees appealed to the wealthy, the upper class. It reassured them that their wealth was their just reward because the here and now, it is all that they believe that is theirs. Thus Josephus writes on this: Sadducees are able to persuade none but the rich, and have not propounded truth to them, but the Pharisees have majority of their side. So basically, because the Sadducee was really appealing to the rich, because the rich was like, oh really, the Father must be blessing me because I got this increase. So they were like, okay. So they started, all the wealthy people started gravitating towards the Sadducees. Okay?
Now, the Sadducees, they didn't believe in keeping Torah?
Right, they do, but they believe in keeping Torah, but they just don't believe in an afterlife.
The afterlife and the rewards.
Right.
So the reward is present right
Right.
now.
Whatever you get right now, whatever He blesses you with right now, that's yours. Okay, anything else after that, you die, it's over. There is no soul being raised, there's none of that stuff.
So as far as the punishments for breaking Torah, did they follow through with those?
Well, they felt though then you just won't be blessed.
Okay.
Okay.
But the blessing was that they saw because they had wealth.
Right. They believe their wealth, the Father gave them this wealth, so they believe that what they're doing must be correct because I got all this wealth. How else would I get this wealth unless the Father blessed me with this wealth?
That's like what is it? What do you call it? The teaching. People call it now.
The prosperity
teaching.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's
Yeah.
the Sagittarius.
Oh yeah. That's where they're getting it from. All right. And you can find that in Antiquities 13, 10 through 10 and 6. All right, now that's the Sadducees. Now let's look at the Pharisees. Okay, Pharisees. Antigonus had ordered disciples who became Pharisees. Same guy. This group established a new council, which came to be a Pharisaic Sanhedrin. The Pharisaic Sanhedrin. This council was made up of 70 members and led by pairs of two. And now, so basically, it was so big that it was down to, they broke it down to two pairs. Okay? Two pairs. One was called the Nasi. The other one was the, right in Hebrew. The Deep, I think it's called. Let me see here. Big Deep. All right, so you got the Nasi group, which is technically one council, and then the other one was the father of the Beit Din, or the Beit means house, and Din means of judge. So it had judges, and it had what they consider like a president, so to speak, a president on one side, and a judge on the other side. Now I want you to understand that there was a group of people on both sides, and both of them would help rule as a whole. But I'm going to share with you all, the Nasi and the Beit Din were also set up as a school. Have anyone heard of the School of Hallel?
Yeah.
All right. So this is where this is coming from. All right. So from setting these two groups up, these pairs, having a sort of a president, so to speak, a Nasi, and having a judge, a Beit Din, a house of judges. That's how they were going to rule the community. All right. So it says later they were named after people, so that's why I say the School of Hallel. But what I want to focus on here says for the course we will be talking about two major names: the School of Hallel, and do y'all know the other school? I know everyone's heard about Hallel, the School of Hallel. But anyone know the other school?
No.
Okay, this is Hallel. The next one is going to be this name here. We're going to talk about real briefly, but this is the main one right here. SHAMMI. Okay, so you got School of Hallel, which is a very known school. And then you have McCann, but he gave it to Shammai. We'll talk about that in just a minute.
Was it the guy that cursed Dawud out and kicked stones at Dawud?
No. He must have lived a long time if he could do that. All right. All right, so the Nasi and the Bet Din were also set up as schools, if you will. Later, they were named after certain people that were called rabbis. For this course, we will talk about the two major names, the school of Hillel and Shammai. Now, the Pharisees maintained a belief in the tradition handed down by the forefathers, as Josephus writes. Okay, so we'll see what Josephus writes. Okay, one of these Pharisaic traditions was that of making of a wall around the Torah. Okay, so they want to put a wall or their traditions around the Torah. Everyone's familiar with Pharisees doing that, right? Why do you transgress with your traditions, right? All right, so it says, Moshe or Moses received Torah at Mount Sinai and handed it unto Joshua. And so Yahushua or Joshua to the elders to the prophets, and the prophets handed down to the men of the great assembly. They said three things: be prudent in judgment, raise up many disciples, and make all walls around the Torah. Okay, that's their belief. The Pharisee Akiba said tradition is a fence around the Torah. So that's why they created that. All right. Now, these things are in their Talmud. This is where this information is coming from. If you want to look at the Talmud, I'll give you the number. It's M and then space AVOT11. Okay, and the other one is M313. If you ever, I don't really get into the Talmud and all the other stuff. Okay. By the time of Hillel, the two schools had become deeply separated. In other words, these schools started to separate. Hillel's original counterpart was maintained Mechem. Mechem, however, resigned his position and became an Essene. So this guy left and became an Essene to the community. Now you have just these two schools. Okay? Then you can find that in Josephus 15, 10, and 5. All right? Mechem was replaced by Shammai. Hillel and Shammai were the last two pairs to lead the Pharisaic Sanhedrin. The rift between them was so that the Shammai who was known for his bad temper, forced Hillel to sit and listen to him at the point of his sword. And though he were his student, you can write that in the Talmud B, SHAB 17a, the result was the complete split of the Pharisaic house into two houses. The house of Shammai, which is considered the stricter house, and then the house of Hillel, which is supposed to be less stricter than that house. All right, from that point forward, only the Pharisee Sanhedrin was known of who have led, and not by the other pair of other ones. Basically, that's why we hear a whole lot more of Hillel than you would of Shammai. All right, Pharisee at the time polarized into two schools of thought: the school of Shammai and the school of Hillel. The two schools held different views on many halakhic issues, or the way to walk, and argued throughout the first century. Eventually, the school of Hillel prevailed in these arguments and served as the foundation of the modern rabbinic Judaism. Okay, there are also many important connections between Hillel and the ancient Nazarenes. We'll see that later on. Now, so that's the Pharisees. All right, so you got the Sadducees, which you understand they don't believe in the afterlife. They believe that everything you get is the here and now. Then you got a Pharisee group that believes in the afterlife, but they also believe in putting a fence around the Torah and adding traditions and customs to it, which is their problem. So now we get down to the Essenes. Okay, Essenes. All right, so the Essenes. It says John Arrhenius. This is written by Josephus. John Arrhenius was succeeded by a high priest and king by his son Alexander Janneus in 103 to 76 BCE. Once, while he was officiating as high priest at Sukkot, the Pharisees pelted him with citrons, and Josephus responded by slaughtering the Pharisees by the thousands. Okay, you can read it in Josephus 13, 13, and 5. Okay, Pharisees joined with Janneus' foreign enemies, but when he overtook them, he had conspirators crucified. Josephus, Antiquities 13, 14. Okay, so from this point in time, a group split off from the Pharisees. Now, this is the group that we're talking about. This group became known as the Essenes. This group was led by a figure known as the righteous teacher. Their teacher of righteousness was at odds with the figures thereof, and called those priests simply wicked priests. In other words, the Pharisees, in his mind, they're all wicked. He says, whom most scholars identify as Alexander Genius. At the same time, the Essenes were at odds with the group from which they had split off, from which they referred to with several euphemisms must be notable, which is the wall builders. So now the Essenes looked at the Pharisees as, you guys are considered wall builders. You guys just make these traditions and you put it around the Torah. No one can really keep it because of your traditions. So they call them wall builders. All right? The Essenes describe them as follows. We separate from the majority of the people and from all their uncleanness and from being party to or going along with them in these matters. Qumran, I put the Qumran number there for you guys. 4Q. T C 7.9. If you guys want to look it up in the Dead Sea Scrolls. All right, the other one is, at the time of the majority, which is the Pharisees, Josephus writes this: the Sadducees are able to persuade none but the rich, and have not the populace, he says, to them, but the Pharisees had the majority of their side. Okay? As seen, this is called the Damascus Scroll, which is a very, very popular scroll. I don't know if anyone ever heard of the Damascus Scroll. Damascus document 419. All right, so what they have is the Essenes found the Pharisaic wall of restrictions to be too lax. The wall builders who went after precept, the precept is a raver of whom it says they shall surely raver. That's in the document 419 there. So the Essenes stated the wall breakers fell into 3 traps of Balaam. 3 traps. Here's the first trap is fornication. Second trap is wealth. Third is defiling the sanctuary or the temple.
So the Pharisees?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So the Essenes said they did all 3 of these. They were trying to get the wealth, even though the Sadducees were the one that got most of the wealthy, but the Pharisees were the ones that all the people loved. I mean, everyone loved the Pharisees. They didn't like the Sadducees. So because of all of this is why they're separated. So it says, the Essenes believed that the Pharisees were defiling the sanctuary with their lax ways. In the document known as the MMT, Mishkat Maaseh HaTorah, some of the works of the Torah, the Essenes lay out 24 points of halakha related to purity. And this is where we're going to get into later on about immersions and baptisms and things like that. He said they disagreed with the majority, which was the Pharisees, and because of which they believe the Pharisees were defiling the temple. Many of the 24 points made in the MMT are exact counterparts of the Pharisaic halakha given later in the Mishnah. Okay?
What's the Mishnah?
That's another Jewish book.
Oh.
So
Mishnah, Talmud. Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right, so it says the Essenes began with the first adherents became followers of an individual known as the teacher of righteousness. They followed him to Damascus, where they all entered into a covenant together, which they believe was the renewed covenant. This renewed covenant was centered around purity. Okay? He says, for when Israel adorned him by being faithless, he turned away from his sanctuary and gave them up to the sword. But when he called to mind the covenant he made with their forefathers, he left a remnant for Israel. They considered their iniquities and knew they were guilty of men. He raised up for them a teacher of righteousness to be a guide to them in the way of his heart. That's in Damascus Scroll A1, 1 through 11. So they got a teacher of righteousness that, they found that he was to be a righteous teacher. And so he said, let's go to Damascus, because he's getting a remnant prepared to be married. Okay? So he's taken this remnant and they went to Damascus. So we're going to talk about Damascus. Okay? The captivity of Yisrael went out of the land of Yehuda and dwelt in the land of Damascus. You see Damascus Doc 6.5 in the Dead Sea Scrolls. It says, they who have entered the covenant must distinguish between defiled and pure, teaching the difference between set apart and profane. They must keep the Shabbat day according to the specifications of the set apart days and the feast days, according to the commandments of the members of the renewed covenant in the land of Damascus. Damascus Scroll 6:17 through 19. Okay? So has everyone understood what I got to so far? I'm just trying to get from a historical point all the way up to why they went to Damascus. Okay? Now, Ezekiel 47:16 says this, and then we're going to go to Zechariah 9:1, dealing with just Damascus. Okay, so Ezekiel 47:16, it just states that Damascus is going to be a part of the third temple. Everyone understands when you read Ezekiel chapter 40, starting about roughly 41 through, let's say, 48, you know they're talking about building of that third temple. Everyone's familiar with that, right? All right, good. Zechariah 9:1, though, I want to read that one. Zechariah chapter 9, verse 1. So it says, the burden of the word of Yahuwah in the land of Hedroch and Damascus shall be the rest thereof. Meaning they're going to get some rest over there in Damascus. And he says, and when the eyes of man, as of all the tribes of Israel, shall be towards Yahuwah. So all this is going to be in where? Damascus. That's why they're going to Damascus.
Right.
Okay? So they felt that Yahuwah led them to Damascus to bring the renewed covenant. Basically why they went there to Damascus. All right? It says they also saw the justification as coming from the renewal of the covenant through purity regulations, which they came to refer as the, listen to what this says, works of the law. Okay? There are some of our pronouncements concerning the law of Elohim, specifically some pronouncements concerning the works of the law that we have to determine are beneficial, and all of them concerning defiling mixtures and purity. Okay, now we have written to you some of the works of the law, those which we determine will be beneficial for you and your people, and it will be reckoned to you as righteousness. Works of the law is going to be reckoned to you as righteousness. Damascus Scroll 4:19, 4Q MMT. Okay, that's where this works of the law that Shaul is getting this from. It had nothing to do with the Torah. Okay, so everyone understands this so far. All right. So, thus the Qumran community taught that they were all partakers of a renewed covenant established by the teacher of righteousness, which offered them justification through their faith in him, and his teaching, specifically purity regulations, which were known as works of the law. So in a nutshell, the idea of the renewed covenant was based off of works of the law. Okay? So now we understand this. Let's look at Galatians chapter 3, verse 1. Okay? We're going to look at Galatians. We're going to see what's going on. Okay, this is going to be Galatians chapter 3, verse 1. Good old famous Galatians. I've got 2 more pages and we'll cut it off there. Galatians chapter 3, verse 1. Works of the law. So he says, O foolish Galatians, who has bewitched you that you should not obey the truth? Before whose eyes Yahushua Mashiach has been evidently set forth, crucified among you. This only would I learn of you. Receive you the Spirit by the works of the law, or hearing of the faith? Okay, which one did you get it from? He says, are you so foolish? Having begun in spirit, are you now made perfect by the flesh? Have you suffered so many things in vain, if it be yet in vain? Now think about verse 3. He says, are you so foolish? Can you remember the old foolish Galatians, right? But he said, are you so foolish, have begun in the spirit? Are you now made perfect by flesh? Why did he say that? Because the works of the law were actually fleshly regulations. I'm going to wash every day because he's going to come any minute now. Because they're under the renewed covenant is what they believe. They believe they were the last generation. And so because they were the last generation, we're going to wash every day, and their garments that they wore every day was white linen garments. They said, I'm a bride ready to be married. So they did this every day because they thought they were the last generation. Okay? So then it says, verse 4. He says, have you suffered so many things in vain, if it be yet in vain? He therefore that ministers to you the Spirit and works miracles among you, does he do it by the works of the law or by the hearing of faith? Even as Abraham believed Elohim, and it was accounted to him for righteousness. Know you therefore that they which are of faith, the same are the children of Abraham. And the scripture, foreseeing that Elohim would justify the heathens through faith, preached before the good news unto Abraham, saying, in you all nations be blessed. So then they which of the faith are blessed and are with the faithful of Abraham. Verse 10, for as many as are works of the law are under the curse. For it is written, cursed every one that continues not in all things which are written in the book of the law to do them. Now, what Shaul does now is he, from the works of the law, now he's adding in the parts of the curse that you find in Devarim or Deuteronomy, right? But again, we're going to see, where did Shaul get this from? So he says, but that no man is justified by the law in the sight of Elohim. It is evident, for the just shall live by faith. And we'll talk about that next week. It says, the law is not of faith, but the man that does them shall live in them. Mashiach has redeemed us from the curse of the law, being made a curse for us, for it is written, cursed is everyone that hangs on the tree, which you'll find out in Devarim. So basically, he's saying, all right, these works of the law, because in the Qumran community, basically looked at it as these purity rituals that they were doing will make you righteous. In other words, shows like if you do that, you don't really need the Mashiach, if that's the case. So they're trying to share with you that that's wrong to think that by washing and this purity washing every day, that's all you need to do to be saved. That's just like Acts 15:1. Remember what it talks about the circumcision. You have to be circumcised, and he said your salvation is through your circumcision. In other words, I don't need the Mashiach. I can just be circumcised of the flesh, fulfill that covenant, I'm going to make it in. Right? So they're trying to exclude the Mashiach. Okay? All right. So this is the Qumran part. I'll read it one more time for you all, and I'll give you the full Qumran number for this. But it says, the term works of the law has shown up as a technical theological term used in the document of the Dead Sea Scrolls, which says, now we have written to you some of the works of the law, those which we determine will be beneficial for you, and it will be reckoned to you as righteousness in that you have done what is right and good before him. And remember, it's let me give you the Qumran number here. 4Q M M T 4Q3 94 through 399 section C 926 B 31. All right, so let me move out of the way.
Yeah, move on out the way there.
All right. That's where you're going to find this at here. Okay, so everyone gets that? So if you get yourself a Dead Sea Scrolls book, you can find that for yourself. All right? So now we understand where the works of the law comes from, right? It's not something that was formulated in the Tanakh, right? Now let's look at Shaul. Let's see what Shaul is doing. Look at Acts chapter 9, verse 3. Acts 9:3. Well, obviously 9:1, Acts 9:1 and 2, then we'll go down to 3. But Acts 1:9 first. We'll just start from the beginning. It says, and Shaul, Paul, Yet breathing out threatening and slaughtering against the Talmudim of Yahuwah went unto the high priest. He says, and desired of him letters to Damascus. Where that's he's at?
Damascus.
Okay. He's going to Damascus to the synagogues, that if he find any of this way, whether they were men or women, he might bring them bound unto Jerusalem. So that's what he wants to do. He wants to go to Damascus, and he wants to take all those that believe a certain way. Okay? Now we just told you the Essenes were in Damascus, where the Dead Sea Scrolls and everything is located. Now, we'll keep going. Verse 3. It says, and as he journeyed, he came near Damascus, and suddenly there shined about him a light from heaven. And he fell to the earth and heard a voice saying unto him, Shaul, Shaul, why persecute you me? And he said, who are you, Adon? And Adon said, I am Yahusha, whom you persecute. If it's hard for you to kick against the pricks. And he, trembling and astonished, said, Adon, what will you have me to do? And Adon said unto him, or Sovereign said unto him, arise and go into the city, and it shall be told you what you must do. Okay, so you see he was on his way to Damascus, and he almost was there, and the next thing you know, the Mashiach comes on the scene, and he's blinded by his light, and he's asking why you persecute me, because his people went to Damascus. Okay, now let's keep going. Verse 8. She says, and Shaul arose from the earth, and when his eyes were opened, he saw no man. But they laid him by the hand and brought him into Damascus. And he was 3 days without sight, and neither did eat nor drink. And there was a certain Talmudim or disciple at Damascus named Ananiah, and to him said to Adon in the vision, and Ananiah. And he said, behold, I am here, Adon. So now the Mashiach is talking to him. So he says, and the Adon said unto him, rise and go into the street, which is called Straight. We're going to see where that is in Damascus. And inquire in the house of Yehuda for once called Shaul of Tarsus, for behold, he prays, and has seen in a vision a man named Ananiah coming in and putting his hand on him, that he might receive sight. And Ananiah answered Adon, I have heard by many of this man, how much evil he has done to your saints at Jerusalem. And here he has authority from the chief priest to bind all that calls on your name. Okay, now think about that. So he has gotten, he was in Jerusalem persecuting everyone that was called on the Mashiach's name. Right? And if that wasn't enough, he's like, not only am I going to do it here, where else did they go? So since they're in Damascus, they're calling on your name over there in Damascus as well. I'm going to go over there and get them too. All right? 15 says, but the Adon said unto him, go your way, for he is a chosen vessel unto me, to bear my name before the Gentiles, and kings, and the children of Yisrael, for I will show him how great things he must suffer for my name's sake. And Ananiah went his way, and entered into the house, and putting his hands on him, said, Brother Shaul, the Adon even Yahusha, that appeared unto you in the way as you came, has sent me, that you might receive your sight and be filled with the set apart Ruach. And immediately there fell upon his eyes as it had been shackles, and he received sight forthwith, and arose and was immersed. So after that, then he got immersed, or commonly called baptized. You know, for some that don't believe that, or after you should die, you don't have to do that anymore. You're baptized in the Word. Okay, great. So, verse 19 says, and when he had received meat, he was strengthened. And then Shaul certain days after that, the Talmudim which were at Damascus, and straightway he preached Mashiach in the synagogues, that he is the son of Elohim. All right? So, we want to find out, he went to Damascus now, right? Things happened to him, and then he winds up being in Damascus for a certain amount of time. So let's look at Galatians, just stay in Galatians, go to chapter 1, in verse 17 and verse 18. Verse 17 and verse 18. And I'm going to close with one more place that you guys can't go. How am I looking at time?
4:50.
Okay, I made good time. All right. Galatians 1:17 and 18 says this. Never went I up unto Jerusalem to them which were apostles before me, but I went into Arabia and returned again unto Damascus. Now, listen to what it says. Then after 3 years, I went up to Jerusalem to see Kepha and abode with him 15 days. He's in Damascus for
3 years.
3 years. Okay? Where the Mashiach, the Talmudim also went. And maybe tomorrow I'll go over where some of the other, does anyone know where all the other Talmudim went? Because we only really hear about Shaul.
Asia Minor.
Okay, Asia Minor. Okay, we're going to see specific places they went. One was India, for example. They found scrolls there. We'll see that next week. All right. So my question was, why did Shaul remain for 3 years in Damascus? Okay, so it's because it took 3 years to be fully admitted into the Essene community. In other words, you can't be accepted unless you stay in this Essene community for 3 years. All right, so let's listen to what Josephus has to say. This is actually in the War 287. But this is what it says. But now, if anyone has in mind to come over to this sect. Now, remember, they're called sect, and you'll see later on, next week, they're called the way. All right? He is not immediately admitted, but he is prescribed the same method of living which they use for a year. So here's your first year. Then after this is while he continues, excluded, and they give him also a small hatchet and aforementioned girdle and a white garment. This is their attire while you're there. And when he has given evidence during that time that he can observe their continuance, he approaches near to their ways of living and is made a partaker of the waters of purification, works of the law of the purification. Yet is he not even now admitted to live with them, for after this demonstration of his fortitude, his temper should be tried 2 more years. And if he appears to be worthy, then admit him into their society. War Scroll 287. Okay? So Shaul went up through the entire process of learning from the Essene community. These studies are, these studies actually what shaped a lot of his doctrine, his teaching. Remember, he was raised from Gamaliel, so he understood the Pharisee ways. By going over there to the Essene community, he wound up learning a little bit more about the Mashiach, and specifically there are a lot of purification documentation, whole lot. All right, so we'll talk about more of that next week when we start getting into course. I just want this Shabbat to go over our foundation, basically from the time that they got out of Babylon and the Maccabean period. I wanted to cover that gap first. Now we got the gap covered. We're going to see that the things that the Talmudim did, the things that Shaul did, the things that Mashiach said, all of that, majority of it came from the Dead Sea area. Okay, it all came from the Essenes community. Okay, any questions? All right, and let me see. And yeah, if you guys get yourself a, I don't know if a lot of you guys have a Dead Sea Scroll book, but if you get that, you'll see that there's a lot of history that's inside the Dead Sea Scroll. Okay, any other questions? All right, well, if there's none, there's no one just to type in. Okay.
It's still off and on.
Okay.
It's gonna have to try to get up on YouTube as soon as possible.
Okay, no problem.
So the book, the Dead Sea Scrolls, that's in English?
Yeah, I have one that's in English. It's called The Complete Dead Sea Scrolls in English by Vermes. Here's Vermes, his revised edition, not his older edition, but his newest edition. And then I have one, which I'll show you guys. I have one. Well, Martinez has one where it's Hebrew on one side, English on the other side. But those two, I like both of those books. Yeah, but in that, they get into the Council of Elves. Y'all familiar with the Council of Elves?
Yeah, a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even Wise, I think, that talks about that in his thesis. Okay. All right. If there's nothing else, we will stand up and close.